What is going on, crew? This time for real, this is the last video of the Sticking Point series. So if you're watching this today, last week we covered the conventional deadlift with Hayden. Actually, he was my guest for the day. So he covered everything related to sticking points in the conventional deadlift. Now let's talk about the sumo deadlift. Today we're gonna break down the sumo deadlift, talk about sticking points in the sumo deadlift, talk about some weak muscles that could be potentially contributing to this problem, and then I'm going to discuss some strategies that you can start implementing into your training to lessen the effects of that sticking point for your lift. Let's start first with missing a deadlift right at the bottom. Similar to the conventional deadlift, obviously there's gonna be times when the amount of weight on the bar is more than your muscles are capable for handling, so there's a strength component that we need to obviously be aware of. Sometimes there's going to be way more weight on the bar than you're ready for, and that is a possibility. Now, it's not always a matter of technique, it's not always a matter of a specific muscle being weak. It could also be that, hey, it's just the weight that you're not ready for, you got to keep training and try it again in the next peaking phase 4 or 8 weeks down the line. Now that we have that out of the way, let's talk about some strategies that we can start using. So the first issue when it comes to sumo deadlift is technical proficiency. Do you understand how to do a sumo deadlift properly? And this is particularly evident in the first couple of inches off the ground in the sumo deadlift. Now, if you're missing your deadlifts at this point, right when the bar leaves the floor, it's usually because your positions are off. So is your chest falling forward? Are your hips too low? Are you yanking the bar? Those are the three main reasons. Make sure you pick the right position for your hips. We've covered this in previous videos multiple times. Usually for the sumo deadlift, the best exercise you can do to figure that out is perform an eccentric deadlift from the top. So what you're gonna do, you're gonna grab the bar and slowly lower it down, and wherever your hips end, that's your perfect starting position. And finally, a coordination or motor control issue where you're letting your chest fall forward. And for that, I'm gonna show you a couple of exercises that you can incorporate in order to train that and teach yourself how to best maintain positions in that particular portion of the lift. Now let's talk about what I consider to be the best accessory exercises to work on your positions in the sumo deadlift. The first one, and one of my most favorite exercises, is gonna be the pause deadlift. Usually you would pick the pause based on the area of the exercise that you're trying to improve. In this case, if you're trying to improve the starting position of the deadlift, you want to do the pause right at the bottom. So I mean a couple of inches off the ground. The second exercise that I want to encourage you guys to try is a pin deadlift. Now the pin deadlift is essentially an isometric deadlift exercise where you're going to start with the bar on the floor. You're going to place the pins as low as possible. The amount of weight that you put on the bar should never exceed more than 70%, because we're not really going for intensity, like the amount of weight that you can load. We're just trying to generate an isometric contraction. All right, now let's talk about missing the sumo deadlift at the level of the knee. So let's first talk about technical faults or issues that we see when lifters miss at the level of the knee in a sumo deadlift. The most common cause is that you're letting your chest drop forward when the bar leaves the ground. What you want to see is for the hips and torso to rise at the same time. If you're letting that bar fall in front of you and your knees are already extended, your hips are already extended as well. Now all of your weight of your upper body, of your torso, plus all the weight of the bar is in front of you. How can you expect to overcome that if you have literally, first of all, you have no more muscles to use in that position, and you have no body weight to counteract the amount of weight on the bar. Now let's talk about just one particular muscle that might be contributing to the fault at this level of the lift. The adductor muscles are particularly important because they contribute to a great degree to the extension of the hips when going from flexion to extension. Now, you need not only strength in this particular muscle group, but also adequate flexibility of that muscle group. If your adductors aren't flexible enough, you're gonna see them pulling your knees in, and obviously that's paired with not having strong abductors that keep your knees out. So you need a very subtle and careful balance between your adductors being flexible enough and your abductors being able to keep your knees out through the entirety of the lift. Let's talk about a way that you can increase adductor flexibility, and secondly, a way that you can increase your adductor strength. Let's talk first about adductor flexibility. For this drill, you're gonna need a box, all you're gonna do, essentially you wanna assume the same stance that you would in your sumo deadlift. So one of your legs is externally rotated, feet pointing outwards, and the other one is on the box. So all you're gonna do, you're gonna start hips fully extended, and then you're gonna drop until you feel like your adductors are being stretched. Not much more than that, but feel like it's getting a deep stretch, and then come back up. Okay, and for strengthening, we're gonna do the adductor plank. Easiest, the more of your leg that's on the box, the easier the movement will be. The further away that you are, the less of you that's on the box, the more difficult it would be. I like to do it with my knee on the box. It's what feels the most comfortable for me. Otherwise, I start having a little bit of knee pain. So all you're gonna do, knee on the box, bend your knees, hold your other leg up. That way you're working on this adductor too. You're working on this one and on this one. Hold it 30 seconds at a time. Do 3 to 4 rounds. You can refer to my previous squat video on sticking point series, where I go through more in depth through every single variation of the Copenhagen plank. And finally, let's talk about a couple of more specific exercises that you can include. Like I said before, pauses are usually a safe bet when it comes to picking an accessory exercise that's specific to a particular point in the lift that you're having issues with. So performing a paused deadlift at the level of the knee is always a great alternative and a great suggestion. So all you're gonna do, you're gonna grab the bar, initiate the deadlift like we talked about. You're gonna pause at the level of the knee for 3, 2, 1, and then lock up. That essentially what that's gonna do is gonna strengthen your positions, and it's gonna strengthen particularly that portion of the lift. Finally, another reason why you might be missing at this particular point in the deadlift is because of inadequate acceleration, or there's not enough momentum coming from the bottom of the lift. So another thing that you can do is you can work on your speed. Now, we spoke about pin deadlifts first, and a great thing you can do is actually combine pin deadlift immediately followed by speed deadlifts, and this is known as post-activation potentiation. You're pre-exciting all of the neurons, all of the nerves in your muscle fibers, so that they can after produce a way more stronger contraction. Speed deadlifts, you do them below 70%, and it's just all about intent. You want to move the weight as fast as you can possibly do it. And finally, another great way that you can work on your speed deadlifts is by including accommodating resistance in the form of either chains or bands, since that increases the difficulty of the movement and the demand of muscle force production as the bar leaves the ground. And finally, let's examine what's going on when lifters miss a deadlift at the level of the hip. Historically speaking, and just based on observation, I tend to see that people miss at the deadlift usually when they have too wide of a stance. Now, a super wide stance for deadlift, I would consider one that when you go down, your knees are not perpendicular, they're more in like an open angle, like this. Stance like this makes it a lot easier off the ground, but then it makes it increasingly challenging at the top. So if you have a super wide stance and you keep missing your deadlift at the top, maybe consider bringing your feet in an inch or two to make that part of the lift a little bit easier. So that's it for the technical portion. Now let's talk about potential weak muscles that you can address. The main muscle group that's in charge of extending the hips is your glute max. So similar to the conventional deadlift, you want to address your glute max through exercises like hip thrust, good mornings with a bar or with bands, and back extensions with weight. And finally, this was advice that was given to me by Ed Cohen years ago when I was having issues with the lock on my deadlift. And he saw me miss a deadlift at the top, and he told me, Steph, you just need to relax. When the bar gets to that point, you've done the most difficult portion of the lift. You got the bar up there. All you need to do is squeeze your butt and lean backwards and relax. Because what happens is that the bar got there so fast, and then you assume that the bar is gonna lock out at the same speed, but it's not necessarily the case. The bar doesn't need to move that fast at that portion of the lift. You can just relax and let it move as slow as it needs to move. Just don't give up and try to bring your hips closer to the bar. Extend your hips, extend your back, and relax. And that is it, my babies. I hope that you enjoyed this sticking point series and that you learned something from it. Hopefully we'll be making more of these kinds of videos in the future if it's something that you enjoyed. And what's up?
Where'd you get that shirt?
Oh, this shirt? This one over here?
Yeah.
Yeah. It says hybrid apparel shirt. Actually, it's customized by me, so we are not really selling the acid wash yet, but this particular design, you can check it out online, and also the one that you're wearing. What? Caesar in the house! So check out Hybrid Apparel if you're looking for the dopest apparel line in and out of the gym. Just be in style all the time. Just look like you know, dressed to impress. That's what we're about here, you know? Come in the gym, you train, you're impressing everyone, and then you go out on the streets still impressing everyone. That's what it's about. Anyway, catch you guys next time.